Hello everyone, Technomods here with another video, and today we are looking at weighted average. So essentially you might wonder what's the difference between the average we looked at in one of the previous videos and a weighted average. So let's look at an example. Assume that a student has taken a measurement of voltage. Let's assume you're in a lab. You've taken a measurement of voltage, and over the number of times you have been taking the the readings of the voltage for maybe a battery you have been charging, or even in a field experiment where you are, say, charging to a solar panel, and you have been measuring over time. So say one day you take one measurement, another day you take 2-3 measurements, another day you take 5-6 measurements, and all these measurements will not necessarily be the same. So how can you tell what is the true average of your battery voltage over a specific number of readings? So maybe one reading, one observation presented 1.1, another day you carried out 6 observations and they give you 1.8. so how do you factor this in? So one of the longest route possibly will be to take in all these values and you multiply them. For example, if it's 1.8, you create columns of 1.8 only with one observation until they get to a 6, a count of 6. You do the same for all other readings. Alternatively, what you can do is look at this formula we have here today. So what this formula can do for you essentially means that the average of the voltage of the battery is essentially the summation of the voltage readings times the number of readings you've had over the summation of the total readings taken, or that is observations in this case. So essentially in this video I'm going to show you 3 techniques to take these readings and get the weighted average, and it's up to you essentially to choose which one to take it up with. The last one I'm going to save the hardest for beginners in Excel, and the first one we're going to begin with the easiest. So the easiest way is to take this formula, break it into 2 or 3 parts as you wish. So the first part essentially is to get the sum of observations. The second part is to get the sum of the number of readings multiplied by the readings taken. So the first thing will be to get the sum of observations, which is B2 to B12. Remember, once you hit the equal sign, type in the formula, type in tab, it gives you the reading. So as you see, the formula has the option of taking one number, 2 numbers, 3 numbers, or taking a whole range. So if I was taking one number, I will be doing something like this: put in a comma, put in a comma, put in a comma. You see, this becomes quite a long process. So alternatively, just typing in the formula. Once you find the formula, hit tab, it completes, put in the the bracket for you, select the range, close the bracket, enter. You have the range. So the next thing you need to do is a sum of product. So what a sum of product will do is it will multiply this cell by this cell, this cell by this cell, and sum this whole thing. So how do we do this? Put in sum product, type in tab, take in the first array, comma, take in the second array, and if you had any other arrays you would have put them in, but in this case we have only one array, so I'm gonna close my brackets, hit enter. So now looking back at our formula, I have the numerator and the denominator. So essentially putting in this, all I have to do is to put in the division of this, which essentially would be saying this value over this value. Pressing enter, this is your first formula. Now look at how many steps it took you. It took you 3 formulas to get here. Let's look at an alternative. An alternative is using just the sum of product and the average. So what we're going to do is we're going to take again equals sum product, select the first array, select the second array, close the bracket, enter. And then to do the average, so I'm gonna take the average of this value over this value, enter. You see, this is the problem. It's very likely you might get it wrong. Why might you get it wrong? Because if you decide to do that, you don't get the correct value. But again, on the bright side is that we had already calculated the total of these observations. So to correct our formula, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the average of this. I don't really even need to use an average, sorry for that one. I'm just going to take this value over, I can say over 37, and it will give me the same answer. Alternatively, I can say this value over into sum of this range. Let's see how this works out. Again, I get to the same point. So this is a second root. So in this scenario, you have saved 2 steps. You have 2 steps out of a possible 3. So the third thing is, you see this value is a 5 decimal value. In some cases you might get up to 10, 20 decimal values, and probably this is much bigger if we come here and increase the decimal places. It's still big, you see. So if you want your work to be really neat, what you can do is just use the round value, select the cell you want to round off, put in a comma, and then the number of digits you want to round off to. If you want to round off to 2 decimal places, 3 decimal places, 4, 5, 6, you see, just put in 2, for example. In this scenario, close your brackets, enter. This is what it closes. But the problem in this scenario is, the reason it's giving us extra zeros is because I had already added, some decimal places. So if I just come here, type general, this is what we get. So the last part of this, this tutorial, an average where you factor in all these formulas that we have looked at. So the first formula we need to do is to round. So in this rounding value, what are we rounding? We want to round off a computation of 2 or 3 things. So the first thing we want to round off is we want to round off the sum product of this range, comma, and this range. Close the bracket. And what are we dividing the sum of product by? We are dividing this by the sum of the observations we've had. So I'll say I divide on that, and this is what I'm dividing with. So just for neatness, I'm going to come here, put in an additional bracket, so that essentially what we're saying is we want, I haven't put in a sum here, we want to divide the sum product of this array and this array over the sum of this array. So finally, coming here, put in a comma, so that now you set the number of digits you want to round off to. So in this scenario, we were rounding off to 2 decimal places, just putting in 2, closing that bracket, enter, gives me the exact same answer we had already received. So you see, in essence, the real difference now comes into how you want to view your formula. This is one big formula that is bringing in 3 different functions and some basic arithmetic skills. This formula, on the other hand, just uses 2 formulas. One is the sum product, which is the F2 value. If we replace this with sum product and select this range, put in a bracket, doesn't give the same value. And here's where the problem comes in. If your arithmetic skills are not on point, then you have a big problem on your hands. So any bracket that is missing is going to present a lot of problems for you if you don't put in the right functionality within your formula. So how would you correct this formula? If it was up to you, put in that, comma, put in that, and remember, make sure you close that. So essentially, coming back here again, what we're trying to do is multiply this array by this array divided by the sum of this array. Let's see if that gives the right answer. We get to the right answer. So Excel is a really quite powerful analytical tool, and it will always depend on how good your skills are and how careful you are when putting in these formulas. If you like the videos, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Catch you on the next one. Thank you.